On today's episode of Texarpreza Cooking, I show you how to make tender and crispy carnitas in the crock pot. We start by cutting up and seasoning some pork shoulder, slow frying in the crock pot, and finishing off with the oven broiler to create that tender meat with crispy edges. Easy, flavorful, and cost-effective food for the whole family. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Texarpreza Cooking. Today I'm going to show you how to make some easy crock pot carnitas. We're going to start by slow frying the carnitas. We're going to use a lot of oil, but don't worry, it's going to drain off and the meat's going to be much more tender and moist and delicious. And then after it's done in the crock pot, we're going to pop it in the oven to crisp up, and you'll get some delicious, crispy, flavorful, tender carnitas. Great for tacos or just about anything you want to use them for. So let's get started. Alright, to start you're going to need a pork shoulder, pork butt, whatever you call it. Here's a good tip. I had this frozen and it's been thawed in the fridge for a few days, so it's completely thawed. Get your pork shoulder when it's on sale for $97, $87 a pound. Because really, I mean, you're getting 7 pounds of meat. I mean, if you take away the fat, maybe it's 5 or 6 pounds. But for $6, I mean, you can't beat that price. For a meal that will feed your family for a few days, this is a great, inexpensive option. Just salt and pepper. I've got the Kirkland sea salt, and I've got a pepper grinder because fresh cracked peppercorns are always going to be better than your prepackaged. Cumin. I like the Spice Islands brand for all of my seasonings. You'll need a good amount of cumin. Cayenne pepper for heat. Make it a little bit spicier with this. Chili powder, a good little bit of heat, good little bit of flavor. Sage, this is optional if you don't have it or don't like sage. I just kind of like the flavor of sage for kind of an aromatic in this. Also some thyme, again, a good aromatic and flavor here. And a bay leaf. For your oil, you can just use regular vegetable oil. I like peanut oil just because peanut oil is delicious. It gives kind of a good nutty flavor. But if you're allergic to peanuts or you just don't like peanut oil or it's too expensive, you can just use regular vegetable oil. A good alternative I like to mention if you don't like seed oils, avocado oil. It's got that high smoke point that you need for frying and vegetable oil type things. It's a little expensive, but it is worth it if you want a neutral flavored oil that is not a seed oil and is cold pressed. So first we're going to get our pork shoulder out. Easiest way to get them out of these vacuum packs without getting the liquid everywhere is to go over to your sink, cut it open, drain out all the liquid, pat it dry, and then you can bring it back to your cutting board without having a mess everywhere. If you got a big farmer sink like this, makes it easy. Just be sure once you're done, it's not a bad idea to clean your sink. Just use a sponge and some soap and water, or you can even use bathroom cleaner. I've found that scrubbing bubbles. Spray it on there, it'll pick up all the grime and goo, and then just wipe it off with a sponge, throw away the sponge, rinse it, and you've got it nice and sparkly clean. Pork roast. You can open up the vacuum pack with a knife. And like I said, you don't have to have the pork butt touch the sides of the sink, but you can kind of drain out that liquid, and you can kind of pat it off. Pick it up, get a good grip on it so you don't drop it. Just kind of pat it off, and then you can move it to your cutting board without a big old mess. Alright, so we're going to take our pork shoulder and cut it into roughly 1-inch cubes. Get rid of some of the bigger globs of fat. I'm going to use my cleaver. I just kind of like it because it's easy to kind of chop through big chunks of meat like this, but you can use a regular chef's knife just the same. Some of these will be boneless. Mine does have a bone. And when it's raw like this, you might have to kind of cut up against the bone to trim it out of there. But I'll just go ahead and start. Okay, so we've got our pork butt in the crock pot. If you get too much, you might get up at the top. As long as you've got at least, maybe a centimeter before the top, you don't want it overflowing. Otherwise it's not going to cook very well. But we'll start with seasoning. So what I've got is I've got a gloved hand and I've got a clean hand. That way I can mix all of the seasonings in the crock pot, and I've got another free hand to do my seasoning. So first we're going to do a generous amount of salt. I'd call that tablespoon, tablespoon and a half, kind of whatever feels right. And then you just take your hand and kind of mix it around. Pepper. One way that you can help yourself eyeball how much seasoning you're putting in when you're eyeballing is just stay in one spot if you're going to be mixing it anyway, and you can kind of estimate how much you're putting on. Like I'm going to put about maybe a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half of pepper. If I just stay in one spot, there'll be a little pile that forms there that you can eyeball as a teaspoon or teaspoon and a half of pepper. It doesn't matter if it's in one spot because you're going to mix it up anyway to get it evenly coated around. Now as time goes on and you get better at eyeballing, you can kind of spread it around so you don't have to sit here and really mix it to make sure that all the pepper is incorporated. But it's a good way to kind of start. You kind of get a feel for how long you need to season something and how much actually goes into your food. Now we're going to need a lot of cumin for this recipe, so I actually took the top off of my jar so I wouldn't have to spend forever trying to get this cumin out. We're going to put a lot of cumin in here. It's going to be one of the main flavors in these carnitas. If you're not a huge fan of cumin, use less. Chili powder. Again, this is going to be another one of those real generous. I'd estimate about 3 teaspoons or so. Then we're going to do, say, 2 teaspoons of cayenne. You can use more if you want more spice. You can use less if you want less. I like spice. I'm going to put a real generous amount in there. Do 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. I forgot to mention garlic powder in the intro. I think I added it in post. But yeah, just a couple teaspoons of garlic. And then we're going to do some aromatics. Just a little bit of sage. With aromatics, a little bit goes a long way. That was probably a little too much, but like half a teaspoon or something is probably fine. You can also put rosemary in here. It's a pretty polarizing flavor. I'm using sage and really instead of rosemary. But you can add that here if you want to. Really the spice blend isn't as important as just how you're cooking the meat here with this kind of slow fry. You can really put whatever seasoning mixture you want. Okay, once you've got everything mixed up and all your seasonings real good in there, the next thing is we're going to add the oil. And like I said, you can use peanut oil, vegetable oil, avocado oil. The important part is you want to be just the top of the meat. So kind of push it down. So pour that oil in there. And like I said, you just want enough to kind of almost cover the top. It's okay if there's a few little bits sticking up here and there. Give it a good little mix once you've got the oil in there. The good thing about this is the parts at the top are going to kind of get a good color. So if they're not everything's completely immersed, that's fine. That's about where you want to be. Alright, so I've got this set in the crock pot now, and I've got it set at high for about 7 hours. The big thing about crock pots is high and low is not a temperature, it is how long it takes for it to get to its temperature. All crock pots are going to get to about 200 degrees or so before they level off. Low just takes a much longer time to get to that temperature. High goes a little quicker. I'll put the times that the crock pot company says it takes right there. However, depending on the age of your crock pot, it could be different. My mom has a really old crock pot from the 80s that the low setting is really low and it takes forever to get to temperature, but it has really good results if you've got the time to slow cook something. If you've got a little bit less time, high is perfectly fine. Really, you just want to make sure that there's enough time for all of the connective tissue to break down. And so we'll come back in 7 hours. You don't really need to do anything to this, just let it cook. So a couple notes on this while the carnitas are cooking. As far as the spice mixture goes, I found a bunch of different spice mixtures. Some use orange zest. I think a Chipotle copycat recipe uses juniper berries. Some use capers. The spice mixture is not as important here as it is just the cooking method. The cooking method to get it to that fall apart and crispy texture. You can put whatever spice mixture you want in here. In fact, you could even modify this recipe to do kind of a tender pulled pork if you wanted to in the crock pot. Now, as far as the cooking method, we're starting out with lots of oil. However, part of this process will be to crisp it in the oven and drain all of that oil off. They're going to be on racks in the oven. You're going to pull it out of the crock pot and leave most of that oil behind. The oil is essential to getting that soft, tender texture. If you don't use it, it's going to be really dry and not very pleasant. The thing to remember is moisture is fat. Moisture is not water. I mean, yeah, they can be kind of mixed together, but for the most part, if you cook with water, you displace all of the fat in the meat, and the meat turns out really dry and stringy and almost mealy if you cook it too long. But if you cook in fat, you know, have you ever had something fried that wasn't juicy and tender and delicious unless it was really, really over fried? So by doing this carnita recipe in fat, in oil, rather than braising it in water, all of the moisture is still going to be retained in the meat. So if you're ever cooking something and you find that it's way too dry, add some fat. That's going to bring the moisture back into your meat. But anyways, we're going to let that cook for a while, and once we're ready, we're going to take that meat out of the crock pot, make sure it's shredded up real good, and crisp it up in the oven.
Eventually.
Alright, it's been about 5.5 hours, and we're at the point now where all the meat is just falling apart. If you take any specific piece, it just kind of comes apart. And you can almost just kind of go in there and start grabbing it. So this is the point. You're going to go through here and just kind of shred all this meat apart. Once you have all this meat kind of well mixed and shredded, then we're going to get it crisped up in the oven. Alright, so now we're going to take all of these carnitas and kind of spread them out on these pans. I've got these little grates here that they'll sit on top of, and all that oil will drain down into the pan. And then up on the top, it'll get that nice crisp from the broiler. Okay, so left all the oil behind there. Everything's nice and spread out in the tray, and what we're going to do is pop these in the broiler. You want to make sure it's spread out as much as possible. You know, the more spread out, the better, because you can expose more surface area to the broiler. That way you can get it nice and crispy. It'll be on the broiler on high, 550, whatever your fairly high setting on the broiler is, till the tops start crisping and get kind of that good color on them. Then we'll take them out, put them in a container, and you can hold it for a little while if it's not time for dinner yet, or serve it right away. Alright, so you have to do these one at a time. Set your tray up next to the heating element. Maybe not the highest one, but just enough so you can get, you know, a good 6 inches between the tray and the broiler. Close it up, and then you want to broil this no less than 3 or no more than 3 or 4 minutes. Just watch it. Once that top starts crisping, go ahead and take it out and put in the next one.
Oh yeah?
So if you look at that there, that's about where you want it. It just started kind of frying, bubbling on the top, and giving you that nice little crispy color. Okay, keep in mind the second batch will go quicker than the first because the element's already heated up. You can see there, everything's nice and crisped up. Alright, so once you've got everything out of the broiler, you just put it in a pan like this. You can keep it warm in the oven until you're ready to eat, or serve it right away. So once you're ready to serve, like I said, you can let it sit in the oven for a little bit. It should have little bits of crisp, little bits of sauce, but be nice and tender. Great for tacos. I got some of my Mexican rice that I'm going to serve with it. and some tortillas. One thing you can do is put a little bit of lime juice once you're on the taco to give it just a little bit of citrus flavor. But other than that, you know, salsa, guacamole, whatever you want, it's all good. Real good piece there to just kind of show you just how tender, a little bit of crisp on the edge. That's what you want it to look like. Now as for saving this, you can vacuum seal it if you've got a vacuum seal bag or just regular freezer bags. It freezes really well. Just try to squeeze all the air out that you can, and then you can throw it into some aluminum foil and reheat it. You know, just at 250, 300 for a few minutes, and you can take a whole pork butt and divide it into 2 or 3 meals for the family. So hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.